All right, so the rumors were true. We're getting a partner direct, not a full Nintendo Direct. The fabled June not E3 Direct is a partner showcase, and the internet is on fire. So let's talk about this for a second. I know that everybody was kind of looking for a big sort of first-party Nintendo news drop this month, kind of in line with their typical, E3 plans, E3 not being a thing this year, of course, and Nintendo has been a little bit quiet. People are very hungry for Nintendo news, but let's talk about partner showcases for a couple of minutes and why we probably don't need to be freaking out about this. So partner showcases really exist and were created out of necessity, really. In the height of the pandemic, I believe the first one was in July of 2020. Nintendo was kind of scrambling like everybody else was to sort of figure out what they were doing. They didn't have a lot of first-party news to communicate because everything was so up in flux. This was also the time when something like Paper Mario The Origami King was announced unceremoniously on Twitter. I'll never forget that. It was so wild. We had just started up our podcast at that time, and we were literally like, what is Nintendo doing, And so it was a weird time, and I think a lot of people, myself included, were a little bit puzzled and confused, and it was like a weird time in real life. And so when not even our Nintendo news was stable and coherent, it felt kind of aimless, and I understand why people were kind of upset about that, but a partner showcase exists because at that time, Nintendo didn't have a whole lot of first-party information that they needed to communicate at that time. I am confident that Nintendo has a ton of first-party things to communicate. It's all about timing. And if Nintendo doesn't feel like it's the right time to communicate those things, they're going to hold back on it. But it's the perfect time to showcase some things from their third-party partners. And it's also kind of a loose definition of what could be considered a partner showcase announcement versus a general direct announcement. Nintendo works with, as it turns out, a lot of partners. If you look back at the history of partner showcases, there have been some pretty big announcements in them. Things like Shin Megami Tensei, I think SMT5, I believe, got its kind of vague 2021 release date during one, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Hades, Crypt of the Necrodancer, Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Stories 2. Pretty big games, especially when it comes to third-party stuff. Square Enix typically, I think Bravely Default 2 was announced during a partner showcase. And there are a lot of sort of things percolating that could be announced at this one. I mean, look, if we're talking about a partner showcase, what constitutes for that? Does Bayonetta 3 count? It's a first-party Nintendo game in that Nintendo is publishing it, but Nintendo isn't developing it. So technically, Bayonetta 3 could maybe show up at this. Advance Wars, same way, even though that is a Nintendo property and it is certainly a Nintendo exclusive, it's being developed by WayForward. So in theory, maybe this is actually kind of the best way to put forth some more Advance Wars news and give it a new release date and everything. Maybe that's the case. And even if it isn't the case, look at what else we could get. Persona is almost certainly coming to the Nintendo Switch, and it makes perfect sense to announce that here. That would be huge. I think about things like GoldenEye, which everybody was sort of scratching their heads about. We know that GoldenEye is real, and everybody was sort of scratching their heads wondering where it was during the Xbox and Bethesda showcase. Well, maybe it's here during the partner showcase. Let's also not forget that we have had Microsoft-centric announcements in previous partner showcases. Ori and the Will of the Wisps was shadow dropped during a partner showcase. I think all of these things are likely. I think there's a chance we could finally see the Arkham Collection. I think there's a chance we get a release date for Alan Wake Remastered here. I mean, I think we could possibly see something like the Mass Effect trilogy here, the Legendary Edition. Like, there are a lot of things that could potentially... There are these rumors of like a Red Dead Switch port. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but I've seen that floated around. Whatever Treasures announcement could be. I mean, there's a lot that Nintendo could have to share here from their third-party publishing partners. I mean, Square Enix, right? The Tactics Ogre Reborn thing was leaked. That's probably going to be here. Dragon Quest Treasures, I think, is really likely to be here because we were promised news on that in June. I mean, there's a lot of third-party news that Nintendo doesn't necessarily need to have buried alongside a General Direct. I mean, think about it. We've already got games like Splatoon 3 on the horizon. Live Alive is coming. Xenoblade 3, of course, is coming, which just got its own dedicated direct. I wouldn't be surprised to see Splatoon 3 get a dedicated direct. And then from there, Mario plus Rabbids 2, I think, is likely to be here. I mean, these are all partner showcase-worthy games. And these would all be huge. If we got a release day, if we got gameplay for some of these games, it would be huge. And I think that there's a lot of potential here, and I think that it's kind of okay, and I'm kind of okay with Nintendo holding some of this stuff close to the vest. If they come back in a couple of months or whatever, maybe that's when they're like, hey, here's your Metroid Prime remake for November, here's your Zelda, here's your, whatever it is they're gonna show. They're just hanging on to it. They just don't feel like they're ready to communicate it right now. They don't need to. So, I'm personally fine. For me, I think it just means that we're going to be getting more news spread out through more of the year. I don't think this means less. I think, if anything, this means more. And I think Nintendo is kind of at this place where they're redefining themselves a little bit. On the Kit and Krista podcast, they talked about how internally Nintendo was a little bit frustrated with how predictable they've become, to the point where the past several years we could basically set our watches to Nintendo Directs. You're going to get one in February, you're going to get one in June, you're going to get one in September, and you could almost literally circle it on your calendar. So I don't know. I haven't worked at Nintendo. I don't know how it is internally, but I could see that. I could see why that would be frustrating, and I could see Nintendo wanting to sort of redefine the way they want to communicate this stuff. And if they feel like they don't have to communicate first-party stuff, they're just not going to. And I think when you look back, too, at the kind of 2020 craziness and the height of the pandemic and what Nintendo was doing with these partner showcases, we were getting one like every month for a while. It was like July, August, September, October. We got the Mario 35th Direct in there. Paper Mario, the Origami King released in there. I mean, they were delivering. We had Indie World showcases in there. They were delivering news at a real steady clip. And so I think if we're going to get something of a repeat of that, I'm kind of okay with not having a general direct. So, I don't know. Let me know how you're feeling about it. I personally think that this is potentially a good thing. No matter what happens, we're going to talk about it. We're going to podcast about it, of course, on the show this weekend. If you don't already listen to the podcast, links are always in the episode description to check out our weekly Nintendo podcast, where we're going to break down everything that happens in the world of Nintendo, the good and the bad. And let me know, I mean, what are you expecting to see here? Are you excited? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know. And look, whatever goes down, we're going to go down together. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.